What are your memories of Michael Parkinson?
He was a lovely man. He really was a nice guy to work with. Um, I liked his sense of ethics, um, his interest in his topics, his guests. There was always a fair bit of work that went into selection of those guests because it had to be something that was going to be of interest to the public, to the viewing audience, but also of Michael, and he would have to have um, the ability to make the guest feel comfortable um, and enjoyable. So it was nice to be part of that team.
You talked
He was,
about him being a nice man to work with and he made guests feel comfortable. Can you tell us a little bit more about that process that he went through?
um, we would, as a group, there were a couple of researchers, and um, we would meet with Michael and go through the possible mixing of people for a forthcoming program. And he would be told, some of the strengths and indeed, I don't think we covered weaknesses. That wasn't really part of it. But he would then read up on these things, and very much by the guidance of the research. He would, when a guest would come to be in the studio, his policy was that he wouldn't meet that guest beforehand. He wanted to meet them on air, which was I think, a tremendous thing to do. So they couldn't cover areas that would be in the interview beforehand, and that I know that you probably experienced this yourself. When you're talking with someone before the event, um, they'll likely come out with a phrase like, "As I was saying to you earlier." Well, there was no saying things earlier. Um, I can think of one exception where a guest, a noted person, well, I'll probably name him, Kerry Packer, wanted to meet Michael beforehand. And that was a difficulty. Here's the most powerful man in television in Australia, insisted on meeting Michael before the program or before the interview. But he held it. He held up on that one. He did not meet Packer. And I think Packer was probably gracious on that one and accepted that he couldn't he couldn't bully the man.
And yeah, I wanted to ask what Kerry Packer's reaction to that was, because we know Sir Michael Parkinson was a huge cricket fan. His dad was a Yorkshireman, a very proud Yorkshireman, and thought that cricket was the most important thing in the whole world. And so Michael Parkinson really grew up with that cricket appetite. And of course, Kerry Packer at the time basically was the king of cricket.
Yes, indeed, indeed. Look, Michael's view on cricket was if it's coming out of Yorkshire, it is just holy ground. And I can imagine that he would have, in the last tour of the Australians there, been there gripped by what was happening out on the field. And it's always a tremendous place for cricket, with Australia and England, and Michael relished in that one. I don't know about what Packer had to say about afterwards about his feeling of not seeing Parky beforehand. I don't know, but there was a bit of a joke on that one. That when well, this is getting off the topic a bit, but when Packer arrived at the studios, he accidentally tripped over a chain fence and tore his suit trousers, um, and he had to go into the makeup wardrobe area and get them repaired. So that really set up a different mood from what he was expecting, I think.
And what are some of the other notable names that Michael Parkinson interviewed in Australia?
Well, he loved talking with people, maybe in politics, but not about politics. And there was a very good interview with Hawke, and that was it showed Hawke as a human being and not as a politician. Um, the others, the mix was important, and Barry Humphries was one of the guests, and he was mixed with um, only because I can't remember. I remember the incident, but the interview was going along steadily towards um, Barry revealing that he had an alcohol problem. And that was interrupted by the other guest saying, "Oh yeah, well I've had that too," and that really threw Parky off because he was really relishing where that interview was going as being a warm and sincere revelation of the man. One thing he regretted as much as anything was that he couldn't get Bradman on. He tried many times to get Bradman as a guest, but Bradman just refused.
Yeah, because he was so private, is that right?
I think that's the reason.
And what did you learn from him? Because sometimes when you're a producer and you watch someone doing an interview, I know I've been in this position when I was younger, watching some really talented presenters and interviewers work their craft. You see the process that they go through. Was there anything that you thought that was really quite remarkable about the way he conducted the interviews?
Well, he played great deal of confidence in his researchers and the research they came up with. And he certainly never counted any of these things. He never said, "No, I don't want to go there," or "I don't agree that that's a good assessment." So he had a good team, and he he became part of that team.
Lloyd Capps, we really appreciate you taking the time to share your thoughts and memories with us of Michael Parkinson.
Well, thank you. I'm sorry that we've lost Parky. It was, he was a one-off.